What's your sole purpose? It's what you came here to accomplish. It's also who you're meant to become so that you can make an impact by being yourself. We're all here to unlock our potential and create positive change in the world. Everything starts with you. One is not born into their purpose. One steps into their purpose. Were you born to do it? Let's find out together. Welcome to Born to Do It, a podcast about the positive change makers around us, because there is a positive change maker within all of us, but also when we look around us, our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, our family, they are all positive change makers, especially when they pursue that which excites them to be alive. My guest today is a medical linguist and a medical literacy developer. Two titles you might not have heard before, but I'm going to allow her to tell us more about her journey and what brought her onto the path of storytelling and increasing our health literacy. I introduce to you Joan 2. Hi, Joan.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. So when it comes to finding purpose, I think that a big theme that I need to talk about is healing and being that person who you needed when you were in a hard spot or in a time of trouble of some sort. And when I look at what I needed when I was in medical training, it is much bigger than one course, one person. It is just massive in terms of what I needed. I needed stepping stones from when I was a child to scaffold this medical knowledge, this literacy, and all of the more technical knowledge around anatomy, physiology, all of that stuff that I never got when I was a kid. And if I had had that, then I wouldn't have struggled as much in medical training. They say everyone struggles. And also other pieces are alongside that in terms of social emotional learning, support for neurodivergent people, and the whole strength-based thinking as opposed to deficit-based approach in medical training, because those are all things that came up for me as obstacles. They were day-to-day little obstacles or big obstacles and traumas. And so putting that all together, I needed quite a lot more in terms of what would have supported me better in that time, those hard times, than just any small quick fix or any small intervention, like somebody being kind to me one day, or having a resource of some kind. Those small pieces wouldn't have done enough, because the enormity of the challenges that I was experiencing was far surpassing anything that anyone could envision in the inside of that world. And so I stepped out of medical training and just started working towards building these literacy resources, medical literacy resources, such as activity books, storybooks, A to Z books, where you trace words and letters and do very, very simple exercises, confidence building exercises that all build on a foundation starting from kindergarten, where you can learn parts of medicine, medical knowledge or literacy from early childhood, and then continue to grow at an age developmentally appropriate pace, as opposed to not getting any of that and then having the medical just having this sink or swim situation where you just get thrown in to this drink from a fire hose type of approach to training, which is not really an approach, because it involves hundreds and hundreds of slides, information overload, lots of unnecessary pieces of information just in case you might need it, even though all of that information is available on the internet. And it's just bombardment every single day. And you have to be able to tease that out and sink or swim. And I did, but it was I can honestly say it was the worst educational experience I have ever had, because my nervous system was just on fire. And now with our increasing knowledge about neurodivergence and these hyperconnected brains, it makes sense, because even though I am taking in that same information, my hyperconnected brain is doing so much more work. It is just on fire. Like, my nervous system was completely wrecked after a year of that. And so yes, if we can change this so it is a more gradual approach, then I think that people will feel more prepared. Our entire society will have more access to literacy if we can make these other options available at different stages of learning. And so there are two sides of this, actually, because whenever we have new interventions or innovations, although they may become accessible, more accessible to some people, they may also create more competition. And some people may be able to take more advantage of these kinds of new interventions or innovations than other people. So, for example, AI, some people can leverage or take advantage of those technologies faster, more efficiently, with more resources than other people. And that creates more disparity for in some situations, whereas it may reduce disparity in other situations where people who have not been able to maybe write in the same way, or who are able to prompt well, they can now create things that they have never been able to create before. They have functions, or they have tools that they can use now that they have never had access to. But in the same way, literacy can be a double-edged sword, because if you, for example, have a parent who is able to teach you from a younger age, using all of these different resources, or put you in a school that is specifically for healthcare training or for STEM or whatnot, then you have privilege and resources that other parents may not have, and those children do not have access to those same resources. And so that is a balance that needs to be mitigated. However, right now, because I would say it's blue ocean in this space, because there's nothing. There's hardly anything in the medical literacy space. And I have compiled lists of everything that I have found in medical literacy, everything related that has to do with doctors for little kids, and how to be a doctor, or like just medical books or whatnot, books about kids' medical conditions and things like this, or games, and other different kinds of resources like sets, videos, all sorts of things. There's stuff out there, but there's very little. And when we're talking about things that are more like declarative knowledge, building vocabulary, and just that is patient-centered, there's hardly anything. And so there's so much more work to be done in this space that hasn't even been touched, that people can't even fathom yet, that I don't think that we have concerns about creating more resources in this space for people who don't have access. And the people who do have access to these kinds of resources, or who have the knowledge, they already have that advantage. And usually it is going to be healthcare workers or physicians who already have the knowledge, and they're already teaching their kids. They're already putting their kids through special programs, training, teaching them skills that they are aware of that their kids may need or whatnot. They're already doing that. And so in my view, the more innovation and the more options that we have, the more we can build foundations for everyone who has not had access.
I think with AI especially, the possibilities are endless, but there is something that has also advanced the way that we communicate and exchange these resources, and that's our bravery, our courage when it comes to sharing our own stories and going online and sharing what our symptoms are, what our research is, and how we're finding answers to problems that we've struggled with for many years. And you actually were inspired to create your company because of your own experience having to solve your own mystery case of why you were struggling with eczema, which is part of your testimony that, the human spark within us cannot compete with the AI around us, because when we are determined, we will find the answer. Even if we have to read 10,000 books and speak to 10,000 people, we'll find the answer. So I think that innovation that you're talking about, we're naturally driven from within to evolve. And maybe we've had to have some gatekeepers over the years when it comes to professionals keeping the knowledge for themselves, or some schools having the privilege to have access to certain resources that the general public doesn't have. They've only given that access to select few students. But now, because we're sharing all of that openly, we're teaching each other through our storytelling. I don't think there is any more gatekeeping. Or even if there is, there will soon, the idea of gatekeeping knowledge and preventing people to have access to support themselves, to educate themselves, to heal themselves, I don't think that's going to be possible, because we're like this huge giant organism, the whole planet, that is healing from within. And you made a really beautiful point that you've become the person that you needed when you were younger, and healing is a key component when it comes to fulfilling our purpose on earth. Because if we are on fire when it comes to our nervous system or our physical health, we cannot truly function properly the way that we are meant to. So, the nervous system healing, raising our education, that is part of that healing that you're talking about. What made you pursue with such determination solving your own case with eczema? How did that fuel the spark within you to become the person that brings light to that forgotten knowledge, or the knowledge that's just been ignored?
Yeah, so my experience with this dermatitis was that it was very small, and it just stayed like that for a very long time, years. And it started after I entered medical training, but then I was struggling with it for the whole time after that, and couldn't sleep, struggled with symptoms, the itchiness, and then was being prescribed lots of medications, like topical medications, and none of them were really working. And then it got so much worse at a certain point, like it just went completely out of control. My eyes, all the skin around my eyes got damaged. The skin was just bursting open. It just was splitting and wouldn't stay shut. And then at one point, it just went whoosh, and I had scabs all over my neck. And I was working as a clinical clerk in the hospital at this time. And so I was starting to get funny looks from other coworkers and staff, nurses, patients, and it was painful. It was physically painful. It was psychologically painful. Obviously, like I was dealing with social issues as well. I had people come up to me and ask, "Do you have varicella?" And I was like, "Well, I knew that it was related to the small dermatitis that I'd had for about 2 years by then, so I knew that it wasn't varicella." um, but um, yeah, at that time, I started seeing a dermatologist, and then continually getting these topical medications. Then I got prescribed phototherapy and went on medical leave. And then after I started the phototherapy, which I didn't need, none of the medications, I didn't need any of them. I found out I had a chemical flipped my world upside down, because it meant that all of the pain and the struggles and the symptoms that I'd experienced for 2.5 years were for nothing. It was all preventable. Um, had it been something really rare and not preventable at all, then I think I would have been more understanding. Um, and especially because I was in training. So the fact that I had so much trouble figuring this out, and that, none of my peers, none of the staff who I was seeing on a day-to-day basis, none of the physicians who I saw had diagnosed me correctly in a timely manner, I would have been more understanding. However, because my allergy is actually not that rare, and lots of people struggle with different kinds of chemical allergies, whether it's metal allergies, nickel, gold, fragrance. We hear a lot about people being sensitive to fragrance, and that can range, but it can be as severe as what I had in terms of this allergic contact dermatitis, is what it's called, allergic contact dermatitis. And so I really had to reckon with that, I think, because um, it meant that something had gone wrong in my training, that this very common type of allergy, we didn't even get a minute of training on it. And in terms of eczema, we were just told that, steroids, topical steroids are the mainstay. And then now if we look on Instagram, for example, we can see a lot of people talking about topical steroid withdrawal, which affects a certain percentage of people who get prescribed these medications. And so the fact that I needlessly was prescribed this for 2.5 years and dealt with all of that, and then had to deal with all of the psychological and social repercussions, uh, and even having rashes, visible rashes on my face and neck, and being mistreated by staff in the hospital, was eye-opening to me. And yeah, I really had to take a step back, and think about whether what we were doing was right. Because at the time also, there was a COVID vaccine rollout, and it was big on social media. It was very big in terms of all the discourse, um, and just the way it was being rolled out, with mandates and requiring notes for exceptions and things like this, was, I think, questionable as well. Myself, having suffered from a chemical allergy, I felt a lot of stigma, like an enormous amount of stigma came out towards people who wanted to raise issues with chemical safety, drug safety, personal care products, food products, any kind of issue with our consumer products that dealt with chemicals. And so, with this severely stigmatized and neglected issue of these chemical allergies, I had to do something. And of course, with diagnosis, there's grief and there's anger, because of loss of the previous health that you had, loss of your body parts or functioning or whatever it is. And for me, it was my skin. And people just don't see skin the same way as if you lose a finger or a toe, for example. They're like, oh, it's just skin. Or they don't understand how painful it is, or how it's affecting you at night or your day to day or whatnot. And they tell you to stay home if you're having accessibility issues, and all sorts of things. There's a lot of societal consequences related to having dermatitis. And so I just struggled with that a lot, and was dealing with the grief and the anger and trying to communicate that. And so the first thing I did was I created a worksheet that was like just a person with different rashes on them, and what might be the cause of a rash on somebody's face or on their hand or whatnot. And usually it's something that's touching that part of the body, if it's a chemical or a consumer product or whatnot. And it's very, very simple. Like even a child can understand this. And then I was like, wait a second, there's something here, because this visual representation, along with the terminology, a little exercise, maybe a story around it, there is something here that needs to be further explored. There's more to build out. And so I made a whole workbook of these kind of different worksheets related to medical issues and topics. But it wasn't, I would say it wasn't successful because my skill level wasn't there in terms of making the product, and also because uh, most people are not looking for this kind of book unless they're in training. And not everyone is interested in all topics. Like only some people are interested in allergies, and some people are interested in diabetes, and other people are interested in, I don't know, public health or whatnot. There's so many different topics, and people tend to pick and choose what they're interested in learning. But then I continued on, and I was like, okay, well, I got feedback that I need to make the book smaller, more age appropriate, and focused on topics that fit that age group or whatnot. So I started with kindergarten, and I said, okay, let's make A to Z books. One book on childhood rashes, one book on rare allergies, one book on anatomy, one book on surgery words, and then a book on medical history, and then a book on histology. And so this set for kindergarten to grade 3, they're all A to Z books, 6 books, and brought these out to a STEM fair as well as a book fair. And when people look at these books, they're like, they see where it's going. They see that, this technical advanced knowledge has been distilled, but still not oversimplified. The essence of all of this knowledge is still there, but it's brought to a level of understanding, and the activities are appropriate for somebody who has never seen any of this before. On from there, I then decided to make a storybook about my own experience. It's very loosely based on my own experience of the dermatitis, but it's a story about a girl who is itchy, and then she finds out about these allergies on a television show. And so she's sitting on her couch, and then suddenly Mesolanone comes up on TV, and she gets the light bulb, and she's like, that is why I'm itchy. And she goes and she sees like what is in her paints and her soaps and all of this stuff. And after making that book, I illustrated it all myself, wrote the story and everything. It was the only book that I have made so far where I illustrated it myself. And after drawing everything, I was like, whoa, that was a huge amount of healing coming from that. But I also felt really sad because my whole journey, this 2.5 years, even more, because I had other issues related to the dermatitis, had now been reduced to a small children's book, this little 32-page children's book, and also with questions of representation, even though, one of the objects or the goal was to be represented, have representation in media, like in a children's book or in video or whatever, just have this character represented who has this chemical allergy. One of the first books about a chemical allergy, and definitely the first children's book about my chemical allergy. And at the same time, this chemical allergy doesn't only affect children, it affects adults. And so, the fact that it is a little girl somehow speaks to the child in all of us, but it's not the full story. It doesn't represent everyone. And then there are a lot of cases where people with my allergy or with other chemical allergies, they actually do get good support from healthcare professionals who they happen to find the right one who knows about these things, and they get lots of help, they get tested and all of this stuff. And my story was like nothing like that. I was like on my own trying to find an answer, because I had just not gotten the help that I needed, and just stumbled upon my allergy on social media. And so that was, I think, hard, because that is a hard story to tell in the healthcare space, where usually the healthcare provider is supposed to be the hero of the story.
Mm.
And so, yes, yeah, so being able to make a book, it was healing for me, but also very saddening. I felt very sad after making that book, and I've started work on the second book, which has more going on with this same character who has the chemical allergy, the same chemical allergy that I have. And it is, again, very loosely based. It's like there are differences in the stories, but yeah, again, I feel like there's something very personal and um, heart centered, but also very profound in these kinds of children's books, which is both a gift and also. I wonder if the age appropriateness is not for kindergarten in some of these cases, because it is a sad story, and maybe people would be concerned, like maybe children would be concerned about getting these kind of allergies after these, concerned about chemicals. I know when my kids came home after they learned about the Terry Fox run, they were both worried about cancer. They
Yep.
were both scared of cancer. They were telling me, "I'm scared of cancer," and yeah, that is a fact of life. Is that our kids get exposed to all sorts of things, and they learn what to be worried about and what they shouldn't be worried about. But yeah, I also don't want to burden them with all of the things that every other adult has to deal with, whether as patients, healthcare professionals, or anyone else who is dealing with something serious going on.
I think having the awareness of something, having the knowledge of something, it brings a sense of responsibility, because now that you know something, you are being tasked with protecting it, protecting that knowledge, but also sharing it forward. But there is a level of responsibility that you can no longer dismiss. So the more that you're sharing your story, the more that you're getting to know how you can be of service, the more you're realizing that this responsibility is heavy and you don't want to burden other people with it. But it is only through increasing our collective awareness that we can heal as a society that no longer exposes us to the types of chemicals that are not healthy for us, or the types of coloring in the food that is poisoning our stomach. Because there is a problem not just in the healthcare system, in the way that it prepares its doctors and nurses, and the way that it puts together the curriculum, that might be dismissing certain obvious symptoms, or maybe even emotional intelligence, how to be there for each other when they're going through something in a more holistic way, not just examining the symptoms based on what's in the textbook. I would say children have, naturally, they have emotional intelligence that we adults sometimes forget about, because we are kind of focused on the mental level and consuming all of that heavy knowledge and proving ourselves. So our priorities kind of get shifted as we mature. And I would say once people hit their breaking point, whether it's burnout, whether it's a type of chronic condition, they realize, oh, I've been very far away from my heart. It is my heart that needs healing right now, so that I can heal my whole overall body, and especially that nervous system that you mentioned, that is on fire. But one really crucial point that you mentioned is that we're used to hearing that the doctor is the hero of the story, that the teacher in the school is the hero of the story. We've covered that in some of the episodes so far, that we have a bit of an ego problem in society, where when somebody reaches a certain level in their career, whether they're a teacher, whether they're a leader, a mentor, a coach, a doctor, their ego is looking for that validation. So sometimes they forget that they're there to empower others, to heal others, and to help them be the heroes in their own stories. And when you alchemize your pain the way that you have and turn it into a guidebook, into a book, into a checklist for somebody else, a part of you maybe doesn't get that external validation, the immediate validation, but you know that with what you've created, you're going to empower someone else. So you're restoring the balance in society. You're restoring that balance of we can all be heroes. We can all be living in a healthy, in a creative, united way. And there is no other way around it when it comes to realizing that there are problems in society. We're going to get sad. We're going to go through the grief. We're going to get disappointed. But at the bottom, when we reach that bottom of our emotional state, we're also going to find that purpose. I can help. My story has not been for nothing. And I'm sure your story with your future books, plural books, you're going to take your character on multiple adventures, because I think this is something that we have to recognize. We each have something. We each have a health condition that has prevented us at some point or another, but our life didn't stop because we found a way to overcome that condition, that experience. It didn't define us. Sometimes it did, maybe for a month, for a year. We were super scared to break free from that definition that we place, that comfort zone, but we found a way to break free. And your storytelling is coming straight from the heart of that healing. So I want to say thank you for sharing your story, but I also want to bring our conversation to what is happening in school actually. If children are extremely intuitive, if they're extremely fast to learn, what would you say is the current level of medical literacy at school? And are there schools that are designed in a way that they actually teach children how to get to know their bodies, their mind, the psychology, but also how to recognize conditions? Are we moving in the right direction? Are we progressing in the right direction to prepare children to be the future doctors? Or are we still keeping them isolated from that knowledge until they're old enough?
Well, I think that there is definitely some health education, and I've seen other teachers' resources related to health that meet standards or curricular objectives that are within their school systems. And um, I don't think that there's any problems with what they're teaching. Sometimes it may be a little bit more prescriptive than I would prepare something myself. Because I think as someone who trained in the discipline of linguistics, I have a more descriptive approach as opposed to prescriptive. And also in that discipline, people learn how to think with logic, with models, theories, frameworks. That is different from how things are done in medicine, where it's mostly schemes, information, and memorization. And so I would prepare a lesson very differently, I think, if I was approaching a health topic than what I have seen from other teachers or from medical educators. However, I don't think that it's wrong to tell kids to brush their teeth, wash their hands, and so on, which a lot of health education at the younger levels, they do that. They also may raise awareness about things like allergies. I do think, though, that there are things that are missing sometimes. For example, if kids are washing their hands, then they need to rinse thoroughly to make sure that they're not leaving residues or chemicals on their hands. If they're brushing their teeth, well, we usually see pictures of toothpaste and people brushing, but what if somebody has an allergy to toothpaste? So not everybody uses toothpaste. And so we don't really get much knowledge or information about different options or exceptional cases. As well, I think with younger levels, storytelling is extremely important. And so there could be more stories. However, I also hear a lot that kids are struggling, especially after lockdowns and school shutdowns and things like this, and or that they're behind in certain skills. And I don't know if behind is really the right word. They just maybe have developed other skills during that time, or focused on other things, or had to cope with other things. I'm not exactly sure of all the different cases, but teachers also seem overwhelmed. And so I don't think necessarily that medical literacy or health literacy is a high priority for all learners at all ages, or in early childhood. I think it just really depends on families' priorities, or just depends case by case whether someone wants to introduce it in their classroom or their child at this time.
Hmm. As you were talking, the idea comes to mind that when children go to school, some of them know family members who are with health conditions. So if the education system included some of the more common conditions in society, they might prepare children to be more receptive to what's going on at home when it comes to these big conditions that might be confusing even for the parents, whether it's diabetes or even the big scary cancer. Because we hear more and more stories of people learning to live with these awful conditions in a way that isn't doesn't have to define their life for the worse, but a way that allows them to shift their priorities so that they can change and transform their whole lifestyle so that they can live in healthier ways. And unfortunately, children can do everything right, their parents can do everything right, but if the supermarket is only producing toxins or giving us products that are destroying us, all of these habits that we have built into our lifestyle, sure, they're going to help us to a point, but if we're consuming things that are poisoning us, eventually we're going to have to acknowledge the elephant in the room and the problem, which isn't the education system or our literacy, but rather what are we allowing to be manufactured? What are we allowing to be marketed on TV, on social media? And that probably is a different conversation here, but media representation when it comes to our differences, our authenticity is important, but also maybe controlling how much of children, especially, are exposed to all of these ads that are misrepresenting the truth in a way that is beneficial for the big pharmacies and the big labels essentially that have the money. So
Absolutely.
yeah, there are definitely gaps into the education system in the way that parenting introduces children to medical literacy. But one of your quotes, and I'm gonna skip ahead, but one of your quotes is, "A 6-year-old can learn medicine, so can a 3-year-old." How early can we start recognizing that, a 5-year-old might want to be a doctor? How early is to start preparing that 5-year-old to be a doctor?
Well, I don't think that there's a specific age, and especially now, there was recently a story of I believe it was someone who was close to 70 who graduated from a medical school in Asia. And so it is fully possible to decide after retirement that you want to be a medical doctor, or that you would like to, go do those things that you never got to do when you were younger, that didn't have the opportunity or whatnot, didn't have the time, um, uh, or maybe had too many other responsibilities. And then, at the time that is right for you, you can go and train. And so I don't think that it is age dependent in terms of starting young, or being too late as an older person. However, I do think that for the way that our current medical training system, and how doctors are trained in this drink from a fire hose type of approach, that at least some training is helpful in preparation related to anatomy and physiology, whether that is in university, in high school, or whatnot. Starting too young is also, I mean, questionable. I don't want young children to have the pressures. I don't want my kids to have those pressures, and I would not recommend it in terms of the way that our physicians are trained, because the training is exceedingly difficult and stressful, and so yeah, putting those expectations on our children. I think that I think that having an open approach where maybe we start with everyone as a doctor at 3 or 6, everyone. And then whether you go to medical training or not, doesn't make you any less of a doctor. And maybe that is where we will get to. Or maybe if we don't like the idea of doctor or the term doctor, then everyone has access to medical literacy at least. Everyone can become medically literate, whether a doctor or not. And whether you are or not does not demonstrate how medically literate you are, because we know that there's so many topics, so many issues, that you can be an expert in one issue and not know anything about another issue that is also related to medicine, whether it is biological, psychological, or social. There are so many areas that no one can know it all. And so your medical literacy in one area, your qualification in one area, does not immediately or instantly transfer to another area.
Absolutely. Yeah. Although there is this idea that, and I'm reminded of the military, when you go to the military, you have different kind of assignments and you have different roles, and everybody knows where they're supposed to be during the day, and then they come back and they're together. So there's this teamwork. What if we had different schools approach this concept of teamwork where every group of people, each of them specializes in something during that year? So one person perhaps specializes in what's happening in the brain. So by the end of that, they've learned the different parts of the brain so they can help others when they're having a headache, for example, so that they can bring that into practice. And that could also be turned into more of a holistic experience. So one person specializes in all the teas, and now they learn if somebody has a tummy ache, they're drinking mint tea. So there is this curiosity that we each have that is being harnessed to the best of our abilities to help each other in a time of need, where we're simultaneously learning and having these experiments that allow us to be more courageous when it comes to our speaking abilities as well, when we are ready to declare, I know what I want, or I know what I need. And there is value in offering our services from when we're younger, which is teaching us how to be of service. But perhaps the assignments don't have to be life-threatening, or these situations where you're in the hospital and you have to look after a patient, but rather simulations of that concern smaller problems. But
Yeah.
I would say it would make a really cool experiment to see that in the next few years, approaching health education in terms of kind of assigning people the who wants to be a doctor for the year, or who wants to be a nurse, and who wants to um, just channel their curiosity in a particular area that they choose to. This is led by what the students want.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely think that having access to be able to work on the problems that you're interested in, no matter the discipline,
Mm-hmm.
offers more options and allows people to pursue their interests, and is more efficient in terms of utilizing students' time. And so, yeah, if different schools or educators or professions can offer those kind of opportunities to students, then it can make for a fuller experience in terms of what the student learns, and yeah, how they can channel their energy efficiently.
Yeah, and change the tone of playtime as well. because we're seeing higher levels of aggression worldwide. And maybe if we were to give children a sense of purpose from when they were really young, they would to learn how to alchemize some of the bigger emotions that they don't know how to handle immediately, such as pain or that bitterness or depression, dissociation, the anger. If they knew how to channel it into a sense of purpose and being of service, we might not have these extreme acts of anger that we're seeing on media. Again, the power of teamwork and having each other's back.
Yes, I definitely feel like art and construction, I guess you could say, building something out of something that has happened, or solving the problem in a constructive way is of value. Even, we all deal with negative emotions at time, and that is normal. These are normal feelings and reactions. But the more we can channel it into something that is productive, then the more we can actually build a community and support one another, and actually heal all together, in a way that moves us forward.
Absolutely. It's the unity consciousness that spiritual people are referring to as kind of the ultimate goal of going through your enlightenment. And I think as a collective, this is what we aspire to achieve as well, where we're no longer separated by the titles that we have or the money that's in our bank, but rather we view ourselves as people that we can assist each other, we can learn from each other, and we can be there for each other in a time of need, but also we can pass on that knowledge that is flowing through us at all times and channel it into creative projects, into art, as you mentioned, which in turn is healing us. Speaking of childhood and the media that children are consuming today, would you say that this is one way for all of us to get familiar with medical conditions, medical literacy, for us to increase our medical literacy? Or are movies struggling with a little bit of a trustworthy issue where they're not necessarily sticking to the science, but rather creating stories for the sake of entertaining?
I have seen a few TV shows recently that were around medical themes, and sometimes they're not really realistic. There are some things that can be gleaned from them in terms of new medical knowledge, or that are insightful, that give people ideas about different conditions or treatments, which I don't think that's wrong, but sometimes they're not really realistic. Like sometimes things are happening much faster than they would normally happen in real life, or there's a character that is a bit of a superhero in terms of their abilities. They can do it all for some reason, which not everyone can do it all. But in terms of the children's shows, the picture that you have here is from a show where this character role plays as a medical doctor. And I think this is pretty typical of what we might see in the media. There are storybooks that are similarly themed, and other video series. However, I think also we could see more emerging in terms of people and communities helping one another with illness, or with medical conditions, injuries, just within their communities, as opposed to having a hero figure who is a medical or a healthcare professional. And so, for example, caregivers who are taking care of someone who is ill at home, family members, or patients themselves who are using self-care strategies to stay well or to heal from something. These are all valid, and we don't see those kind of storylines so much in terms of a healthcare or a medical context. Or maybe we do, but they're not obvious to us because they don't have the same appearance of the white coat and the stethoscope. And so maybe if we can highlight those kind of stories, then we can even look to them as models for how we might build community around those.
That is a great point, that when we think about medical literacy in movies, we think about Where the Doctors. And the other show that comes to mind is Grey's Anatomy, where we have a group of doctors and they have 13, 14 seasons of scenarios where they're treating people and they're growing with them, they're healing with them within their own personal life. But maybe the future of medical storytelling is actually empowering the everyday person, how they can act in situation that demands their alertness almost. Are they paying attention to the symptoms in their body? Are they noticing something different about their family members, their friends, that can help not necessarily save their life, but maybe get them to the right treatment earlier than it would have taken them if they were just living life by default and slowly feeling the fatigue but not really pay attention to it, or not even having the time to look in the mirror because they have so much to do at work, which is often the case, that brings our bodies to collapse because we're so busy trying to fulfill some assignment that we completely disregard our own health. But I think you're right. The everyday person needs to be empowered. And once again, we're seeing the figure of the hero, which is displayed on media, that we think to ourselves, oh, I'm having symptoms, but this isn't my job. Or my friend is having that isn't my job. Like, they should go and see a doctor. You should go and see a doctor. But what if we each had an increased literacy so that we can act in preventative ways before we see the doctor, before we have to wait for the doctor? Because sometimes there are really long waiting periods before you can get your appointment in certain countries. Again, if more people were to channel their knowledge and their creativity to creating these educational resources, the world would be a bigger community. And I think this is where we're naturally headed towards. And I think the next aspect of this is social media storytelling, where individual creators are sharing their expertise and they're giving their recipes. And I'm not saying they're always right, and I'm not saying that they're not sometimes doing a damage, but I've personally listened to some of the tips from social media and my life has improved. There is a sense of collectiveness that is happening right now because of social media. And I can safely say that some of the things that I've listened to and followed, I'm trusting strangers online, but the way that they're being so protective of the knowledge that they're sharing makes me feel like I can trust them more than some of the doctors and experts out there. What are your thoughts on social media when it comes to increasing our medical literacy?
Well, I think that we are seeing more movement towards reducing the polarization that we've seen in the last few years. And so people have taken to social media, both medical professionals and people who have never necessarily trained in a health profession, people with different illnesses or problems that they are trying to help other people with. And in terms of the healthcare professionals, I think that many are going on YouTube or on Instagram to fill the space of information with accurate information. And people who are sharing stories about their lived experience are also trying to fill that space with accurate information. And so we have to meet at some place. And so we have scientific knowledge, which is usually being presented in terms of research, charts, statistics, evidence, and then we have stories and lived experiences, people showing their symptoms, showing how they live from a day-to-day basis. And we have to trying to reconcile that. Everybody who is on the internet has to try and reconcile between what fits and what doesn't fit their worldview and the truth. And so, as we have these meetings of minds, I think we will see more where healthcare professionals start to get into more storytelling, increase accessibility of their content, and find better ways to communicate health and medical information to increase literacy. And there's a lot of work to do there as well, in terms of definitions and figuring out how to assess whether it's working. And then on the other hand, people who have lived experience, we have to take accountability and beef up our knowledge and be able to speak on equal ground with these professionals, with their terminology, their mental models that they have built in school. And so, yes, I think things are going in the positive direction because I trust people. We always hear about a medical intervention or something in the healthcare world going wrong. And then we hear about things in the natural health world that have also gone wrong. You know, somebody took some kind of natural product and it didn't solve their problem. They got a lot more sick, and something went very wrong there. Or somebody had an injury or an error happen in the healthcare space that was wrong. There's always going to be stuff that go wrong, but I feel like there is a lot going right in terms of our collective conversations. There's so many people talking about what is important, where we need to go with this. And we need, I think, some revolutionary changes, but this is, I think, where it is getting difficult because we need resources. All these people who are on social media or in doing their work wherever it is, in schools, in hospitals, in clinics, feel like we have resources to do what we need to do. And so we need to build more collaborations, form more connections, build relationships to be able to collectively come up with strategies and solutions where we can work together on things and not just be, a million voices. We need to come together because that's where we build community and we can actually do bigger things.
We need teamwork, 100%,
Yes.
but we also need everyone's voices included.
Yes.
From the amateurs at home to the professionals in their shiny offices, because sometimes it's the amateurs that have less to lose in terms of brand image and brand reputation, that they're willing to test approaches that might be a little bit unconventional, but that they deliver results without harming you. Because sometimes the biological advances, the chemical advances, they bring results to solve your problem, but then they damage different parts of your body. We've seen that especially with antibiotics and heavy treatments. So the more we know about the side effects, the more we know about the risks as well as the solutions, the faster we're going to get to that place of collaboration that you talk about, where our million voices get united in this is where we want to go. How do we get there? And maybe we still have different teams, different groups of collaborators working to find the best approach to get there. But right now, it does feel like a lot of people are kind of popping up here and there,
Yes.
but we haven't actually united to the point where we're working towards innovation in a particular direction. We're lacking
Yes.
a little bit of the vision, but we're awakening. And
Yeah.
there is something to be said about the neurodivergent minds. And even before that, I'm looking at the image that I've chosen, which is a screenshot that I took from TikTok. These are all women. And this brings me to research from the past maybe century that a lot of the subjects in the big research papers have been men. So a lot of the research that we're using today to treat conditions is based on how it affects men in society. So we're seeing the rise of female representation in the online spaces because they're saying nobody cared about my story, nobody cared about my voice, nobody cared about the side effects that I experienced as a woman because this research paper does not cover my side effects, my hormones, my body. So we're seeing the balance being restored, where maybe women didn't have opportunities to get their papers funded so that they can research more how certain conditions affect the feminine side, of the spectrum of all conditions. So we're seeing that, as well as not just amateurs versus experts, but also men and women, and how we're looking after the needs of everyone because we each have different bodies, different uh, cocktail of hormones, and especially for women, our hormone levels, they shift daily. It's not even weekly, it's not even monthly, it's daily. But there is another aspect to this, neurotypicals versus neurodivergence, and how neurodivergent minds are able to get to the diagnosis so much faster because their brains are literally like these bullet trains. Neurodivergent people struggle with a lot of things, including their social life. But when it comes to the sharpness of their mind, they can crack the code to even the most complex problems much faster. So I saw you created
Oh,
a
yes.
book called a little book called Spicy Meltdowns, and I love the example that you used, where on the first page it was I am a big pot, and on the second page it was I am a small pot, and then on the third page I am more like a boiling pot, and how when our ideas are inside that boiling pot, we can cook a whole meal, but we can also overcook it. We can also burn down. So where do you see the future of neurodivergent awareness? And do you view any connection between more neurodivergent people being diagnosed and them actually starting to teach from their unique ways to increase the awareness in their chosen field, whether it's healthcare, medicine, or something else?
Yes. So, yeah, you bring up a lot of good points, especially in terms of representation, because most they're saying that most people who are autistic, for example, are not employed, and so it's the people who have the time to be on social media and post about their experiences and their concerns or their day-to-day lives, who are getting louder on social media and on these informal mediums, just like people who are stay-at-home caregivers are able to raise their voices on Instagram or on TikTok or whatnot, because just having the time and having the platform to be able to come together. And so, yes, we are seeing, I think, more connections and relationship building among neurodivergent people. And I think there are a lot of things that I struggle with in this conversation because we are also diverse. And I cannot represent most people who are neurodivergent, or even a small percentage of people who are like I just don't feel like any of us are particularly representative. But this is an interesting conversation or phenomenon, because in healthcare, for example, um, healthcare professionals, and especially medical professionals, are basically trained to look for high yield content, to look for what is representative and who are the horses, or what are the horses, so that let's say that 9 out of 10 people are the horses and one is a zebra, then I will correctly diagnose or treat the 9 out of 10 people. And I may miss that one zebra, but at least I've properly treated the 9 horses. However, in the neurodivergent conversation, we are all zebras. And so none of us are representative. And this is bringing to light that all of our voices matter, all of our individual experiences matter, and that no one solution is going to work for all of us. And so I guess one of the positives of this is that the stigma that may be associated with certain types of traits or presentations may lessen because of the diversity, just the stereotypes. I don't know why we have stereotypes. And I think that we will develop more acceptance and more awareness. However, I think we need to be cognizant of language, because when we say, for example, neurodivergent or autistic or ADHD or something else, that this means different things to different people. For some people, it means a diagnosis, meeting diagnostic criteria. For some people, it means identity. For some people, it means like their experience and how they relate. For some people, it may just connect with a specific trait and not any more than something very specific. And so in order to all be served, we need to tease that all out so that we understand what we're talking about when somebody says this or that. We really need to know that this person is talking about meeting diagnostic criteria so that they can get support for a specific thing. And this other person is talking about their identity and that they can relate to this, or that is how they identify, but maybe they don't need support or whatnot. And so because of the range of it, I think that this is going to carry on as a long conversation until this all gets fleshed out to the point that as many people can be served by this discussion as possible. But myself, in the context of medical training and healthcare professions, I do feel that we need to re-examine everything in terms of the diagnostic criteria and the definitions, because if I have a trait that is considered like a neurodivergent trait, like for example, I can focus on one problem for years and chip away at it and keep chipping and solving it, resolving it, to the point that we've reached a different place. That may be like a neurodivergent trait of mine that I strongly identify with. But is that something worthy of diagnostic criteria? It really depends. It may depend on function, like, how well are you functioning? How well are you supported? Like, are you struggling? Like, do you have other symptoms related to this? Is this affecting your family? Is it affecting your work or whatnot? Like, all of these other questions come into play. And then if my trait is seen as bad, worthy to be stigmatized and to be, and that it is, so dysfunctional that I may need a diagnosis, then why aren't these other traits or behavioral or social issues also not diagnosed? For example, like we have all had encounters with healthcare professionals that were not great. We have all, I think it is a universal experience that we have all had at least one experience with a healthcare professional, at least in our North American modern society. If you have ever seen a healthcare professional, that something did not go well from a social perspective.
Mhm.
And why can we not diagnose that? And so when I'm looking at this negative thing and this negative thing, why are they not equally diagnosable? this is the issue that I am taking up right now in terms of medical training and the practice of medicine, because I don't think that my neuro trait should be diagnosable if this one here that causes a healthcare professional to roll their eyes at a patient or a student, for example, is not diagnosable. We are both seeing negatives here, and so when
Mhm.
we look at this deficit-based perspective, we need to reimagine this or reconsider all of this.
You make a really good point about identifying with the traits or the labels, getting to understand what neurodivergent means allowed me to understand who I am better, because I realized that I just function in a different way than most people. And that has proven to be a little bit challenging in my life because I didn't know that. I just thought there was something wrong with me, or there was something I can improve about myself, which is once again something very traditional of neurodivergence. They're more aware and they're more likely to bring it back to themselves so that they can evolve, so they can adapt. But maybe the way that we look at neurodivergence going forward isn't another way to create a revenue stream for the pharmaceutical companies, but rather a way for us to improve our understanding as to how many people we actually need to be part of our support system. Maybe we need two more coaches because we know we're going to struggle with, let's say, public speaking, or staying focused with the accountability. Maybe we're going to struggle with these two things a little bit more than neurotypicals that are seem to be flowing a little bit easier when it comes to their daily routine or being social with people. So changing the way that we talk about these conditions as well is going to help us work more as a team or as a community. But what I
Mhm.
love about the illustration here is that maybe we all need to start cooking our own meals. This is what's missing. I feel like because people don't know who they are, they've just been looking at themselves as this empty pot, thinking I'm a small pot or I'm a big pot, I'm a broken, my pot is chipped away. But we're not viewing ourselves as what are we capable of actually cooking, which is really our essence. So we can all get filled with water with the emotions and then boil those emotions and create something, but we each have a specialty, and it's finding that specialty, whether it's Italian cuisine, Asian cuisine, whatever it is, not to make it stereotypical, but rather what is your niche and who do you want to serve as well. So it's not just that we are getting served, but also how can we serve by cooking our own specialty, which is showcasing our authenticity into the world through that cooking metaphor that is beautifully
Yes.
portrayed here, which
Yeah.
takes me to kind of my last question to you. What does your role as a medical literacy developer look like, represent, and how would you advertise it to someone who is on a similar path to you, that is trying to solve more problems and they feel like they're not making as much of a progress in life as they could be? Because your role also kind of includes being a linguist, being a storyteller. So it's not just developing and putting the information together, but also making something playful with it, creating games with it, which is a designer almost role, a learning designer.
Yeah, I think depending on people's backgrounds, everyone will bring something a little different to this space. As a person who trained in linguistics, I see things very uh, logically in terms of problem solving, and trying to come up with elegant ways to demonstrate concepts. Um, and someone else with a different background is obviously going to bring something different. And again, there's a question in terms of storytelling: who is going to be the hero of the story? Is it the patient? Is it going to be a caregiver? Is it going to be a healthcare professional? Maybe it will be an animal, like a fictitious bear or rabbit or something else that is going to tell the story. There are so many options. And So I think uh, it comes from self-examination and just doing what feels right, and trying different things, because my solution may not necessarily work, but I learn from it. Then I make something else, and then I learn more, and I have like a trail of different kinds of books and educational resources behind me that none of them are quite fitting the market right now, because there is no market, because this is a new space, an emerging space where maybe if I make a story about my own experience, my family will appreciate that or gain something from it, or maybe somebody else who I interact with in the world will understand this because they have the same condition, or because they interact with me directly, so they understand how I am affected. But other than that, not too many people are going to be that interested in understanding or reading a story about a very specific condition or illness. And so this is really grassroots. Just starting to plant seeds and see tiny, tiny sprouts. And I think if somebody has a will to make something, to tell their story, then they can raise just that little bit of awareness and grow one little seed into a tiny sprout. And that is all that we can really expect when we're at this stage where like we see that there's a big vision, right? But in the beginning, it always starts like this, where we are planting seeds, and it takes a long time. And so, not to be discouraged, and just find similar-minded people and carry on.
Absolutely. And the seeds that you're planting are already visible. They're little tiny flowers that are blossoming here and there. And I think this is going to be the future of our community building, that everybody's going to turn back to their gardening days where they're planting these seeds and they're attracting people through what they're taking care of, what they're watering daily. So we're chefs in the kitchen in our houses, but we're also gardeners out into the public space. And maybe that's the way that we're, you know, being able to be of service in our personal and professional life. We are generating that brand awareness as to what we're trying to create through those seeds that we're planting outside into the world so that people can see what we're building. But it is whatever's cooking in our pot that we're sharing with the people that we trust, with our collaborators, with our audiences, that is strengthening the relationships, that makes the difference from within the organism, which is the internal shift. And I would say, based on your life path, which is where I asked you about your name and your signs, that you're very much in alignment with what you've come here to do based on numerology. So your first name equals life path one. So J equals one, which is leadership. So here to pave a new path with your innovative and entrepreneurial ideas, because leadership really is about that. You are charging forward into unexplored territories, or changing the way into very known territories, because you know that they can be done in a better way, they can be presented into a better way. Then your middle name, which is the middle life path, L equals 3, so communication. So channel your most authentic self and inspire others to do the same. Communication could be written, could be spoken, but using your words, your ideas, that conscious mind that can deal with the data, to share it with the world and inspire other people to do the same. And finally, T is equals 2, which is life path 2, which is the path of resources. Create resources and growth opportunities as part of your impact, because that is kind of the final the energy with which you're going to be sharing who you are. And the overall life path is self growth. So everything that you do transforms you. So next time that you do it, you're doing it in a different way because you've been transformed. I'm life path 6 as well, self growth. So the moment that my whole life changed was when I committed to that self growth consciously. And I said to myself, I'm going to try to do something every day a little bit better than the day before. I'm going to try to get to know something about myself better than the day before, just a little bit better. And I've been on this journey for a couple of years now, but I would say for people that have met me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'm probably a different person altogether because of this commitment that I have to my instructions, which I didn't know until a few years ago. But now that I know them, I want to make the most of my time on Earth. And I know that I cannot do it alone, but I still have a part to play on my own while nobody's watching, when I'm researching, when I'm crafting, when I'm mastering my craft. So I think you're very much in alignment with those instructions. Do
Yes,
you?
we saw each other's sprouts, and so we got connected.
Okay, that's just part one. We have a little bit more to uh, talk about the energies in your natal birth chart, which is, as I like to call it, the earth instructions. So the 12 houses, each has its own energy, each has a house. In your case, we're working with the path, so the three paths that I showed you. So your sun sign, Libra, which is the element, one of the air elements that deals with communication, that deals with data, with research. Libras are talkative. They're not as talkative as the Geminis because part of their energy is focused on the research, on observations, and making sense of the world around them, which is connected to that path of leadership. So, whatever you discover, it's really so that you can share it forward with other people and use it with a vision, pair it with a vision. The moon sign is kind of your existing identity. So, this is probably kind of the first part of your life where Taurus suggests a very action driven person, somebody who was consuming maybe a lot of information, somebody who was driven to understand things with the vision of communication. So, working with your conscious mind a little bit more, working with making sense of the world at a conscious level before you can switch fully into the sun sign, which is the higher self identity to share and lead. South Node is kind of the assignment that you have in the first part of your life where it was Capricorn. So Capricorn is the most hardworking of the earth signs, and it's also the sign of the most success when it comes to gathering that information and gathering your habits, your routine when you're determined to accomplish something. But your North Node, which is kind of your life purpose or the learning path that you're here to complete in order for you to truly channel your potential and complete your higher purpose, is in Cancer, which is the more emotional sign. It's the leader that leads with empathy, and it's also the community builder of all the signs. It's also a sign that's connected to the family, the values, the roots. So returning back to a more values based approach to success, not just getting the data out there, but also bringing the connection to people into that success. With the rising sign, we know that it's paired with the resources, but we don't know exactly the elements because we don't have a specific time of birth. We just have the date. So to me, this is a surprise element, or this could be you shifting between all energies like a master alchemist. I'll leave that interpretation to you. Venus sign, which is the final aspect, is the love language. So, how you're going to form bonds with others on a deeper level. And it's Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, which is driven by purpose. And this is connected to the resources. So, the people that you have the greatest bonds are the people that you're collaborating with, that you're working with, that you're building together with. And to give this all, to connect all of it together, the first path of leadership is connected to Libra and Cancer. So, heart-led leadership, you're a natural born community leader, trust your ability to inspire others, and let your ideas change the world. With the second path, which is what you're already naturally good at, and you're here to pass it on forward, action driven teamwork comes to mind as I view the Taurus in Capricorn. You've got a gift when it comes to activating people into action. So delegate and let people help you spread the word of everything that you're trying to accomplish. Because I can definitely see a huge vision, which means huge collaboration is going to be necessary to bring all of it into the world. And then with the final path, which is the path of resources, we've got the Venus sign, Sagittarius. So this is a higher education focus. You're on a mission to create a new world with your words, with your communication. So use them to unite people and help them teach too. Because I see the future of community, a place where we're learning from each other and we're empowering each other to teach us, not just to learn, but to teach us something as well with the overall life path, self growth. I feel like this is very much in alignment with what you're doing. What are your thoughts as you're seeing all of it in front of you?
Well, I have to agree, and I know that we are both interested in the symbolism and archetypes in terms of who we are and how we interact with the world and how we grow. And so I mean, I feel like as an introvert, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but
Hmm.
I feel like as an introvert, because the outside world can sometimes be harsh, that I am a bit of a cactus at times, that I really have to retreat from the outside world to uh, grow something new, to really focus in, hone in on that kernel that that hasn't been born yet, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
And so some of these things I feel I haven't grown into them yet, like leadership, communication. Um, I feel like I am just starting to come out from this shell where I may need to level up and uh, become better as a leader or as a communicator. Because until recently, I have still been in this cocoon mode where I am trying to protect this kernel because nothing is going to come out if it isn't protected, right? Like the nugget that hadn't come out yet. And so yes, yeah, no, I appreciate this perspective because I think that it gives me something to aspire to.
Maybe you're just in the cocoon phase of the metamorphosis.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're the butterfly that's tucked in, and the universe is saying it's okay. You're gonna fly soon enough. So just be ready for your flight. But that's the thing about the birds and the butterflies. They don't worry about falling because they have wings to fly. And I think this is the reminder that we are individually giving each other, because sometimes we doubt our own abilities as we show up and we publish the next resource and we capture the next video and we record the next episode. Sometimes we doubt our own abilities, and that's why I feel like we're trusting that when we're open and we're honest, we're going to attract people that are open and honest, that are going to support us the way that we want to support others. So I'm just another messenger on your path, here to offer support. But I can definitely see you transforming the definition of leadership in itself, because we often think about leadership as loud, aggressive, authoritarian, but it doesn't have to be. The heart led leadership, empathetic leadership, female led leadership, um, can be more gentle, and it can be a type of leadership that honors introversion and supports introverted people. It's just that we haven't seen it as much in society.
Yes. No, I think you're right. And in terms of talking about like introverts and archetypes, and talking about authorities, like the physician versus the patient, or the teacher versus the learner. I think I more and more I embody that patient or learner led work that is a different voice. It comes across differently. The work is done differently. It feels different. The internal process is different than than the process for teaching or prescribing, or being the authoritative person with the declarative knowledge. The
Mhm.
whole process, everything inside is different. And I think we need to evolve from that, recognize that, and value it appropriately. And so uh, it is terrifying. Because we are coming into like an emergence of something different that I think is going to change us. But um, uh, yeah, I am only one voice, and I think that is what reassures me. There are many, many voices, and by supporting others, that is how I would like to lead. Because when I follow others, I become the echo, and then I hear the echo back of our voices. And so yeah, I will try and carry on this way.
You may be one voice, but you are an equally important voice. And it's important for all of us to remember that we're not just becoming the person that we needed when we were younger, but we're also becoming the people that can be role models for others that are looking for that savior, to remind them that the savior has always been within them.
It's not me.
It's
It's
not me.
inside. It's inside each of us.
You just hold on the mirror to them. You're like, now look into the mirror.
Yep. Yeah.
Here's your hero. It's in the mirror. Yeah. Well, one is not born to their purpose, one steps into their purpose. That is the mission I'm trying to spread into the world, to remind people that we can change our life for the better at any point of our life. We can grow into a more advanced, more sophisticated, more joyful, more purpose driven person at any point of our life, so long as we choose to change our behavior and take accountability for our actions, because we all can be of service. And you are absolutely being of service and creating positive change with MedULingo, where health is for everyone. And I love that you have your mission set out to raise our collective consciousness on matters of human health. What is your intention for 2025? Who would you like to invite to join you on this mission? And what types of collaborations are you trying to organize so that maybe some of our listeners can join you for a project?
Okay, so right now, my priorities, I think, are um, very focused on just a couple things because I try to have lots of space. I need lots of space to be creative, and to really make sure I'm in alignment. And so I'm an education student, uh, working through some courses related to education, and I think that this is increasing my knowledge, specifically around education theories, evidence, and practice that I have never had before. And I am looking at this in the context of medical education and how it applies as well. And it is giving me that background, and uh, opportunity to examine the literature and the scholarship that has already taken place. And so I'm carrying on with that, but I am interested in engaging stakeholders, school stakeholders, and their perspectives on matters related to medical education. And so I welcome anyone who wants to engage with me from that perspective, who wants to write me a note or follow my work on social media as well. I'm currently working on the second book of this girl with the same chemical allergy as me. It's called The Green Soap Girl. And I have received funding from Calgary Arts Development, which is basically from my municipality for this book, which includes sending out copies to libraries, clinics, schools, where the book may be in use or shared with audiences, or could be shared on social media. And so if anyone has an interest in that book, then they could also contact me. I have a couple of other ideas and have put in a grant for another book, but I don't know exactly where these are going to go yet. But I think just a couple areas of focus is enough for now.
Absolutely. And I'm sure the new year is going to bring more opportunities for conversations and collaboration that have not yet arrived in terms of your own mindset. But when the right people arrive, everything is possible. And that's the intention I'd like to kind of end our conversation. More collaboration and more teamwork in 2025, because together we can do things in a much bigger, larger ways. Thank you for your time, Joan. We have gone through longer than anticipated, an hour and a half, but I've absolutely enjoyed our conversation. And I think we've captured many big points when it comes to health, when it comes to the future of medical awareness. And I'm sure the work that you're doing is going to open up possibilities to increase awareness into domains and industries further than just the healthcare system. But this is a great starting point. So thank you for creating positive change in the world.
Yes, no, thank you. I have not done a podcast for a long time, and it was a privilege to be invited to yours and to connect with you and have a chance to talk to you about all of these ideas. And I will look forward to continuing to follow your work as well.
If you were to leave our listeners with one message, why would you say they should join you on this mission to increase health awareness and literacy?
Well, I think that anyone who is looking for healing and change in big or small ways, if they align with the work that I am doing, then I would appreciate connecting and having a conversation, or seeing how we can work together somehow to share our message or to advance the work. In small ways, I have, for example, sent a book across the country or even around the world to get an opinion. And yeah, it's these small steps that are daily practice that keep things moving.
Keep the conversation going. As you
Yes.
said, the healing and the growth and the awareness happens when we're doing it together. And even if we're introverted, we're still connected. So there is power in recognizing that when we open up to one another, we create from this heart space, and progress happens at a much larger level in society. Thank
Yes.
you once again, and thank you for